welcome to the next installment of Amicus Recruitment's Roundtable events. I'm your host, Jordan Hayward, and today I'm joined by Praveen, Michelle, and Engin, three senior engineering leaders with a wealth of individual experience at this level. Now, today's topic, we will be discussing the importance of taking your product to market before your competitors beat you to the punch. We'll be discussing the implications if you lose the race, how much we can flex on quality in order to do so, and strategies to get to scale once you do. So that's what we'll be covering today. Before we kick off, I just wanted to kickstart with some introductions, and I'll go round the room here in order of people that appear on my screen. So first and foremost, I'll hand over to Michelle to give a quick introduction.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet everybody here. I am Michelle Waldorf. I am an ex-Procore Technologies Director of Software Engineering. My focus is developer productivity, focused on delivering scalable systems that make routine tasks, processes, and decision-making automated, or at least easier, so people can focus on using their strengths to provide value to customers. I'd also like to say I care deeply about helping everybody in tech thrive while they deliver what their business needs, like rapidly releasing new features and putting them in the hands of users without burning out.
Perfect. No, I love that. It's so important to do so without burning out as well. So, which is a whole topic in itself. But no, thank you, Michelle. Really appreciate the intro. Engin, you're up next.
Oh, thank you, Jordan. Hello, everyone. I'm Engin. I've been building and leading distributed engineering teams and taking products to market in autonomous driving, perception, mapping for the last 10 years. I had leadership roles at Gatik AI, Toyota Research Institute, Here Technologies, and a bunch of small startups. So both small and large companies. And lately, I've been focusing on AI and ML applications. My leadership approach, I really focus on helping cross-disciplinary teams focus on what's important and deliver in the most challenging technical areas. And I'm really passionate about helping our teams scale up technology in a sustainable manner, not just for today, but also for tomorrow, in a manner to innovate and push the boundaries. And for those who want to chat more with me, the easiest way to find me is through my LinkedIn.
Perfect. No, really appreciate it. And final introduction, Praveen.
Hey, thanks, Jordan. Glad to meet you, Michelle and Engin. I'm Praveen. I'm currently working as an engineering leader at Velocity Global. We are an ER platform. I love, building teams and building products. I thrive really, really well in the early startups and the product market fit stage because, it's an uncharted territory or untested waters, and that needs a ton of analysis, thinking, trying out things. But happy to hear and share my learnings so that other people can get faster to market their products.
Perfect. And yeah, as mentioned, Praveen, this has been a long one in the making, this topic. So I think we spoke about 2 months ago about this one, didn't we? So I appreciate you coming to me with the topic, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can uncover. But yeah, thank you everyone for the introductions there. So wanted to kind of kick off. Seems like I was rereading the question. Seems like a bit of a basic question, but then I was having a think about it. And the question is, why is it so important to go to market first? And I suppose the basic answer would be, well, so you beat your competitors to the punch. But then I was thinking about companies like Uber, for example. They were the first rideshare company to go to market, and then Lyft came in and have somewhat done just as well, if not better in some areas. But I know that's not the case for every single industry or organization. So Praveen, I want to start with you, given it's the topic that you were passionate about, wanted to talk about. Why is it so important to get your product to market first and beat your competitors to the punch?
Yeah, it's every startup is goes through this cycle, right? Hey, and I mean the classic theory is like, hey, first mover advantage, right? Like if you are the first mover, you have the leverage many times to actually define what the product and and in some opportunities you have the opportunity to create a new market segment, right? Having said that, the cons is that you have to go through the learning the hard way, right? If I'm building a brand new product, right, no matter what the MVP could look like, there is a sufficient amount of time and effort investment. And if you are maybe coming into the market second, you have much more information about what the customers did not like it, where were the gaps, and you could address them and then build your product. But I truly believe, right, irrespective of the cons, if you are the first mover, you have the opportunity to create new segment, in many cases. That could be like the Uber, the Airbnb. And in my personal case, I worked on a security product, which is like browser as a platform. When we initially started many years ago, nobody thought about solving secure connectivity using a browser, right? And that gave us the platform to create a new market segment. After 6-7 years now, it has morphed into SASE, where all cyber security firms, including like Palo Alto Networks, have a product offering on that. So I truly believe that there is a leverage or an advantage being the first to market. And I think the art of identifying the product market fit first is, again, right, delivering with speed and identifying the right unit of one that can be delivered to customers and get some feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love the part about feedback as well. Obviously, if you're first to the market, you're first getting feedback, and then you can look at how you scale or improve from there. Whereas other organizations that haven't quite done that yet, they're not going to have that valuable insight and valuable information to take on board. So, yeah, that's brilliant. Michelle, Engin, anything to add to that, or?
Maybe I'll go while Michelle is thinking. So I think Praveen put it really eloquently. Maybe I will just like agree with all of that and add a few things, especially in AI, ML, real world robotics projects. A big part of building a product is, as both Praveen said, figuring out what your product market fit is, which is largely unknown by everyone, including your competitors. And majority of the learning past the hypothesis stage happens in the field. So the faster you can go to market, the faster you can start answering the really hard questions, because like maybe 80% of them you answered through user research, some field studies and whatnot. But then the moment you put a robot or an AI ML application in the hands of a customer, the entire equation changes. So in addition to this, first mover advantage, Praveen touched on, taking your product to market quicker also happens to accelerate that, like, multiplier, and helps open up the gap between you and your potential competitors. So it's really, really important to be able to like take that, package your product in a way that can start providing value really quickly, put it in the hands of the customers, validate your hypothesis really quickly, and then see where you can really take it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's all about, I think, obviously, Praveen, when we were initially speaking as well, we were talking about obviously getting your product to market quick, but then obviously scaling from there, and building upon that as well. And I think, Engin, obviously you've just touched on that there, which is great. How about you, Michelle? What's the importance?
Yeah, so a little bit about my personality is I'm not an early adopter. I'm more in the middle.
Hmm.
And so that early risk of really trying to build a market, like you're saying, is very exciting. I would not personally, I don't, I started my own business and I had a lot of trouble 2 years of finding the market fit until I made money. And so I realized how difficult it is. I kind of like the notion of the second mover because you already see there is market fit. And if you have a good strategy of penetrating that market and doing it very quickly, you can get to revenue very fast. You're not, for example, Airbnb is not the first mover in rental. It's Vrbo. Vrbo was the first, but they were not targeting the same market that Airbnb is. Airbnb is the second mover, and look at how well they've done. Just part of my personality. So part of moving quickly and perhaps being the second mover, some of the things that are important is really know that you want to execute quickly. And so say Praveen's team is executing to find market fit with a new technology. Where I come in my niche of developer productivity is making sure that Praveen's team has a template or a microservice that has observability and built-in best-in-class observability. There's a good CI and CD process so he can accelerate his features out into production. And if there's a bug, we'll revert it and we'll establish some quality gates for him. So I like to be the wind under your wings, I think.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's interesting about like Airbnb being second to market. It's interesting hearing different like I guess my view or how I look at it from an outsider's perspective, everyone wants to be first to the market, but it's not necessarily the case. It's maybe analyzing where people have not gone wrong, but maybe where they could have improved, and then trying to add that different perspective or value yourself, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Praveen, Engin, have you ever been in a position where you've preferred to go to market second, or you've seen something that's gone to market and then you've analyzed it to see where you could maybe improve or add a bit more value to that certain market?
Yeah, certainly. It certainly happens. Like, especially, for example, like some of the robotics applications we have in the field, they have been around for 10, 15 years. But then now we are able to look at them under completely different lights and see where things may have failed in the past and learn from that and then put it into good use. Maybe not like in my current role, but like in future roles. So I really like Michelle's perspective in this as well. Just maybe as a strategy, you may choose not to go to market first. Let others perhaps like figure it out a little bit, and then come crushing from behind with all your infrastructure, all the right pieces in place with a team that knows what they really want to build, and build it, and not necessarily deal with all the uncertainty yourself. I really appreciate that perspective as well.
Mm-hmm. No, that's perfect.
Yeah. No, 100% agree with Michelle as well. I think all of this ties is right. Like if you have seen the companies who have been for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? The product itself evolves, right? It's not this one which either the founders kind of drew on back of the envelope, or the first pitch slide deck that gave them the initial funding round. The product evolves, right? And I think what we are trying to actually solve for is, hey, do we have the process, the mechanics and techniques to understand the market, right? Our customer, and is there a gap, and how quickly we can identify this, how quickly we can develop them, and how quickly we can give it to the customer, get the feedback, and how quickly we can monetize, right? holistically, right, we are trying to cut down the life cycle of this whole entire organic process. And because I think humans perceive and process information when it is categorized well, right? We say, hey, this is the first mover advantage. This is the second, mover. It's just that, as we kind of learn, we use that information and apply and make it better. So I think if I have to close it someday, I think that's at the end of the day, you could be a third player, but if you execute well, right, and if you read the cues of the customer and market better than somebody else, I think you have that leverage.
Absolutely. While we're on that, then, how do you go about like every idea, like you said, Praveen, it evolves. It's never a company that's been around for 20 years. The first idea isn't the idea now, probably. How do you go about evolving that idea and scaling that idea when you have taken it to market? And I know we've mentioned a few things, like obviously we take on board feedback of the market and what customers are dictating and stuff, but what strategies have you implemented to go about evolving and scaling?
Yeah, so I see there are different stages of scaling as well, right? And this is not like a problem where you just like, hey, this is the standard playbook and you go execute. Those are just like directional pointers, and then what you have is, right, it depends on the team, the market, there are a lot of things that go into play, right? It's at the end of the day, if you want to have a wonderful symphony, everybody in the orchestra should play the role. And I think one way I've categorized is, hey, if you are like trying to break the identify the product market fit, now you are a 5%, like the first a group of people who have started, right? It could be the founder, the founding engineer, the founding CPO. Now and you have to hire like first 25 or 50 people, right? It's an it's one type of problem. But once you have reached 50 to 100, 100 to 250 and 250, so there are different levels of scaling, and every time you're going through this exercise, you are in some shape or form building a new company, because the old processes, the old techniques no longer apply. And the companies who have been most successful and relevant have mastered this art. Hey, what is now the time for me to adopt a new thing so that I can set myself for success in the next stage of the growth. So again, right, like I can give you one concrete example just to be make this content tangible, right? So when we first build the product, right, we choose like, hey, if I can sell this to 5 customers in 5 different segments, right? Banking, insurance tech, US department. And if I can prove this, right, basically the other companies in this, vertical or categories will be compelled to see, hey, what, my competitor is using and what is the advantage they are getting. And now, can I use the same product and have that similar advantage also, right? So if I kind of position, how do I sell to my customers or how I sell to my segments, and then, prove in each different category, I think it gives me that flexibility or opportunity, more importantly, to target multiple markets at the same time. And I think right, that's that's the one of the I think crucial things that helped us. And what we did was, hey, we targeted a finance customer, we targeted insurance, we targeted operations, and then US, I mean, like the defense sector, and we were able to incrementally identify use cases that that would address the customer problem, and then increase the stickiness of the product, right? And as the product becomes critical for the user or the customer workflow, then you have a more longevity in the contracts, and that becomes the foundation to build more and more features. And then as the requirements arise, then you have the opportunity to pivot and make something bigger.
Yeah, no, I love those points. I like what you're saying about there, where it's, as it evolves, it's almost like starting a new company each time as you're going through new stages of development. And I'll touch more. I want to touch more on that a bit later on, cause I want to cover kind of how we pull everyone together within the organization to do so, and does like the culture affect that, or does the culture get affected? So no, really appreciate your thoughts, Michelle. I'll be interested to get your view. Obviously, you've founded your own company. How was the vision for you at the beginning, and how did that evolve from someone that enjoys going to market second, I suppose?
Yeah, so funny story. When I turned 40, I said, I'm going to create my own company because I want to work in the internet business. And in Chicago, at that time, there weren't really companies. It wasn't the Bay Area. I was kind of working in the suburbs of Chicago. So I decided to naively create my own business. And I had just gotten an MBA, and I'm going to sell market research products to eBay sellers. And I thought surely all sellers would want some research on their market, and I was completely wrong. And then I heard this concept of lean startup, and became a big believer. And I'd love to hear Praveen's and Engin's thoughts on lean startups, where basically they say you want to test your hypothesis of whether the market exists is create a page with a button, see if anybody presses that button that they want to see more. And I basically did that, and I changed my business model after struggling for 2 years to I'm going to just affiliate model, and I'm going to show people the most interesting products on eBay. At that time, they controlled the user experience. So I was a third-party developer, and I could show them information they didn't have on eBay, and they went wild. Like, they would hit bots on my site. They'd come back looking at these rare and unique items, and it just exploded. But it took me 2 years to get there. So basically, I'd like to put out there, how do you feel about the lean startup type techniques to test hypothesis of market fit? And what's your experience with business models that create friction? Do you have people pay, which is a barrier to adoption, or do you just make it free and make it easy for them to use?
Yeah. Maybe Michelle, I'll pick this one up and maybe like answer both your question and also what Jordan asked initially, which was like, how do you scale up? My approach has been like, maybe I'll be the guy in the middle this time. My approach has been identifying, like initially at least, like talking about startups and newer projects, identifying the critical subset of functionality that you really need to build to draw some kind of value. And instead of going deep in all features that you eventually want to build, just build that core functionality and the pieces necessary to take that to market. Like, it may be some kind of, your CI/CDs, your training pipelines, like whatever they are. And it may be a combination of some core machine learning model that's really your competitive advantage. In your example, that was a little button that you were testing, and operational pieces. and start closing the loop with your customers. And once you have all the pieces in place and you tested your hypothesis, maybe you failed, maybe you pivoted, whatever you need to do, you do that. And then that forms the foundation of what you want to scale up next. And the reason why I've always gravitated towards that has been, I like breaking things. I like failing as quickly as possible. I like proving myself wrong so that I can find the right path. So that has been my approach. And without having enough of the right pieces, usually the companies struggle in the field. That's why I like building all the right pieces. Like I put a lot of emphasis on building the right kinds of pieces in place rather than just building the functionality and trying to rush it to the market. So that's where I'm somewhere in between the first adopter and the second adopter approach. And looping back to Jordan's questions, then how do you scale? So the way I look at it is, if you have built your foundations right, if you have tested your hypothesis right, then you try to grow those foundational pieces vertically. Now the new challenges are, of course, as soon as you have new kinds of customers or different kinds of requirements, things will break. We will start uncovering new requirements, some of which may now be critical for the success of our newly pivoted product. And looking at it from the engineering research side, there will definitely be an influx of requests to our engineering and research teams. So that's where I think that's where we really need to start thinking about how our wider organization can support that delicate balance of building new things, responding to requests, fixing stuff that is potentially broken all the time, and then that becomes an organizational question. How do you prioritize? How do you communicate? How do you build? How do you test? How do you deal with the customers? How do you continue building trust, while there's this burning fire in the house, shield your teams from all the craziness that's happening out there. So that's usually how I think about, well, lean startup. I think that's a cool idea, but that's not where it ends. That's where everything starts.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Like what you're saying there, it kind of takes on to the next point in a second as well, but about getting your core foundations right. There's obviously all these ideas and everything that you want to be building, but it's just important to get those core foundations right, build that, get that to market, and then you can expand from there. Intrigued to see does that require you to flex on anything? And what I mean by that, in order to get your get your product to market first or as quick as possible, do you have any flex on the quality of the code or maybe the resources that you're bringing in? Do you bring in extra resources to make sure it's done where maybe other areas of the business have to not suffer, but have to ease off a little bit? Yeah, what flexibilities, Engin, I'll start with you. What flexibilities would you have to ensure you get your core product out first or as quick as possible?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I just picked up a keyword and I'll address that. Code quality, that never suffers in my teams. I'm not a believer of let's just do POC. We don't care how good it is. Let's just kick it out the door, see what happens. I don't believe in that. In my previous teams, we spend time upfront, and I like it that way. Just building the right kinds of processes within the teams. How do you write code? How do you maintain code? That is sacred. That is always that's something we always pay attention to. Where I think we can cut corners is really asking the question of, let's say, I will use Michelle's example because it's a good example, simple to talk about. Let's say we need a button on our app. And you can just put a rectangular box, or you can spend a bunch of money working with UI researchers and designers and whatnot, trying to figure out the exact tints, exact color, how much the corners should be rounded. They are probably not necessary, but what we need is someone a piece of thing that someone can click on, and that turns into some kind of an action. So that's where I think really that's really understanding the functionality and what that means to the customer, and trying to eliminate everything that doesn't matter to our customers is really where you can flex and stretch and prioritize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's brilliant. Would Praveen, Michelle, would you add anything to that at all?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Please go ahead, please.
I have a very short thought. My first boss in my professional job would always say, you can have fast, cheap, or good. Pick two. And he would love to say that. So I do believe it's all a trade-off of those three components: faster, cheap, or good. And it really depends on what kind of runway you have. Do you have funding? Are you bootstrapping this product? Do you have existing customers that you can't disappoint? So you have to keep the good bar high, and perhaps fast is a little slower, but you have good and less expensive. You elevate those two, but it's the trade-off between those three: fast, good, and cheap. Praveen.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think very valid points. I think what I, in my own experience, have found is that if you are starting, or if you're in those early stages, you should optimize for speed and quality. You can always be limit the scope, and a product or a service, right? It's like that first impression that you emotional impression that you create with the user. And I'm not saying it's a make or a break, and you cannot turn things around, but turning things around after that is it could be hard and expensive. So be selective, but be quality focused. Some leaders like to say, you don't ship product, you ship quality, right? And I think in some scenarios, the way I think is like, see, time is the most valuable thing, right? And if you are enabling a user or a consumer to give their time to engage with your product, you have an obligation to give them the best experience possible, right?
Yeah.
It's a non-negotiable thing. And I think and it's not just a responsibility of one individual in the team. It's a collective responsibility of the team and the company that's offering this, right? So
Yeah. Maybe I'll I love Michelle's and Praveen's perspectives on this. Maybe I'll just add one little thing on top of what Praveen said, and also Michelle said, quality and speed. Where a lot of, especially early young teams, struggle is when picking speed and quality. We end up embedding a lot of assumptions into the code that we are building. And those kinds of things end up hurting the most in the long term. One of a story that I picked up recently is this robotics company. I will not share the name or who they are. They initially assumed that all of their robots, when they go to the field, will operate on flat surfaces. Someone just made that assumption, happy assumption. And they could have abstracted the code in a way that hides all of that math, and so that they can break that assumption later on when they needed to. But instead, because that assumption was once made and accepted by the entire team, now everyone started building their stuff in 2D. And now someone asks them to start climbing ramps, and they can't. Which means now they have to really, if they want to keep that customer, they have to go back to the drawing board, perhaps refactor a bunch of stuff. It is hard, it's expensive, and that could have been totally avoided. That's where I think just questioning the assumptions that we are making when we are picking that fast route, and understanding what they mean to us and what will that mean to our customers' experience, as Praveen said, in the long term, is very, very important. And tying that to perhaps some part of your question, Jordan, comes down to picking your first team. What kind of team do you want to pick? You would want to pick an experienced team who can understand both leadership and engineers and researchers who understand these kinds of assumptions and their implications in the long term, so that we can avoid these to the extent possible.
No, no, very well said. And as you were saying assumption, right, Engin, what it resonated me is right. Like if you have a very young team, right, and sometimes if you are an engineering manager or a leader and you are into so many things, you assume that this individual knows the best practices. You assume they would think a little bit more before doing it, and only after the fact you realize that's not the case. And right, so I think and these things, right, unfortunately, you cannot somehow intuitively or automatically get these skills. You got to go through the pain. That's the only
Yeah,
way of getting this.
you have to go through it a couple of times, let it hurt you a little bit, and then you learn your lesson.
So that's brilliant. Yeah, some really good points there as well. Michelle, I love your points about what your boss used to say to you about fast, cheap, or good. We actually use that in recruitment a lot as well. That's what we say to clients. Do you want a fast service, cheap service, and good service? Pick two. So no, it's interesting that it relates to a lot of different fields and stuff. But no, that's great. I guess wanting to kind of understand. So we've talked a little bit there about making the assumptions, and then Engin, as you mentioned, it kind of had to go back to square one. If the people hadn't have just assumed, could have probably overcome that challenge earlier on. And I think, Praveen, when we first spoke about the topic, you were saying about working in a discovery phase. How much time is too much time to be planning before you have to start getting things moving and getting things to market? Michelle, I'll start with you. Have you thought about how long you should be planning a new product, a new feature, a new release before actually getting down to work and getting it out there?
Yeah, I was going to ask this organically, so this is a great prompt. So I guess the question is, how do you work with the business goals and your product partner, your marketing people? I guess I'm going to add to the question, which is, I usually work very hard to establish objectives and measurable success metrics over time, which is, okay, we want it to look like this, and we want 5 beta users by Q3, open beta, at the end of the year where we want 100 users. Is that what you're thinking success looks like? And you'll either get a horrified reaction or yes, that's good. If you get a horrified reaction, don't even start building it, because you're on completely different worlds. So I say spend the time up front before you build something that you are not sure of. So is there one more questionnaire that the product marketing people or whoever's closest to your target market, product or marketing, either one, understand what the value you're trying to capture for them? Are you competing against a manually maintained spreadsheet? And if we just automate their workflow, they're going to be happy. We don't have to put AI and machine learning and all this stuff in. Just automate their workflow. What's the simplest thing we can deliver? And how can we make 5 people happy at the end of Q3? And really talk about those numbers, and really don't execute until you have some backing that your business will support your team through these metrics. Otherwise, you are going to face a disaster at the end of the year, and layoffs are going to happen. So I wanted to put that out there, as I'd like to learn from everybody here. How do you negotiate what success looks like with your business partners?
So maybe I'll add 2 things. I picked up on one, something that both Praveen and Michelle you said, and I'm also a true believer of that. And I want to make sure that that's said out loud, which is what we are delivering is not just an app or a robot or whatever, right? It's like the whole experience that is a collection of the thing that we have built, plus, as you said, Michelle, of your operations, your market, your sales. That is the product that we are building. A lot of especially early stage companies make the mistake of thinking that the tech is the product, but tech is only a part of the product. That is not the product. And of course, when they go out to the field, try to support their customers and whatnot, they realize that they really haven't planned for it, and then things come tumbling down. Now, to go back to your question, Michelle, you said something like, I think you said defining objectives and metrics and measurables. That's how I think about it. Like if I am able to articulate really clearly the outcomes that I want from my project, and everyone reads it and looks at it and says, yes, that's exactly the outcome that we want out of it, then the number of users you test with, how you take it to the market, it matters less now because you understand the outcome. And you can align everyone around that outcome and say, this is the outcome we should all be driving, and make all of your assumptions and decisions aligned with that outcome. Now you can go back to your start taking a step back, going back to your cubicles or meeting rooms or whatever, start building that. That's how I think about it. And anything where we are not able to define that outcome, those very clear objectives, that's where we really need to spend time on. That's where we really need to work more with the customer, maybe send one more questionnaire, do another workshop, and understand that. And because everything trickles from that. And moreover, if you're able to define that really clearly, and you continuously do that study with your user base and and the industry, as the desired outcomes change, now you can very clearly reflect that back to the teams and say, our assumptions changed, our hypothesis changed, our needs changed, our customers changed. Maybe they, after 6 months, they started doing something differently, and that doesn't fit you anymore. Maybe that's where you pull the ripcord and say, sorry guys, this is not going to work out. We will start, we will keep going after different customers now. That's how I think about planning versus execution versus prioritization.
I love what you said about setting the team up with autonomy to chase it as fast as possible. And as long as you're transparent with the market changed, something changed, they're happy. They're smart people. Engineers are smart, the smartest people in the room. So as long as you're transparent, they will say, oh, yeah, you're right, market changed. Let's do this fork.
Yeah, and Praveen also identified this changing assumptions, right? Or assuming things. Let's say leadership makes a decision in one room and then only communicates the results of that, or what they think should be the result of that, and not the actual driving factor itself. And then that's where that's where assumption starts coming into play, and people will do crazy things, and you won't know what will come up from the other side.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just my thinking. I think a lot of companies who are building products around tech, right? They take a lot of inspiration, from all the big companies, right? Like the Google, Netflix, Meta, and right, and there is a ton of aspiration, from the engineers to over-index on the tech and not on the problem, because that's the coolest thing, right? And sometimes I feel that because we are comparing two different type of companies or so, right? Like a company like Google, Netflix, or Meta, right? They are leveraging technology to get that strategic advantage and first mover advantage. And we right, like a startup on the other hand, right, they are trying to find the product market fit. So sometimes we got to be mindful of how should we kind of compare and set our goals or the processes. And one of the things, because there is so much information out there about this, and to pick the right relevant thing is itself an art, right? So that's one thing. The second thing people always focus on the output, right? But nobody talks about the input metric. Hey, if I want 10 leads, what should be my market funnel, or 10 customers? What should be my pipeline? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? Only if I get 1,000, maybe I'll get the 100, right? So there is that lack of focus, I would say, and I don't think it's by design, or it's just that teams don't acknowledge or recognize that's missing. And yeah, I think if both of them are collectively or cohesively seen, right, along with other stakeholders, right, that includes sales, marketing, products, operations, support, with R&D that includes engineering and product, I think we can get better outcomes on the OKRs.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a very easy thing to do is focus on outputs constantly and all the time. It actually came up in a conversation I had last week. We were talking about how you can keep engineers motivated and inspired despite the market conditions. And a thing that actually came up is, like, rather than focus on the outputs, which in today's market is a difficult market. Let's not get it wrong. It's challenging. Your outputs aren't, or the outcomes aren't always going to be there. Whereas if you can control your inputs, and they are the things you can control, I think it's all about, like, making sure you're on board with that journey and everyone's focused on those things, and then your outputs and outcomes will come later down the line. So no, yeah, absolutely love those inputs. How do you, we kind of briefly touched on that. How do you bring? Is it just about bringing together an engineering org to focus on building a product? Because I always think, like, right, when you're releasing a product or a new feature, that's when you need to start bringing in the wider business. So you need to bring in your marketing to make sure customers know about this. You need to bring in your sales team to make sure they're selling this. How do you bring those teams together? Because they're all going to be from different backgrounds, different individuals, different personalities. What are there any major challenges that anyone's faced? And I'll open this up to the room, but any challenges that people have faced when trying to get everyone on board to that common goal?
I mean, maybe I'll start with like a seemingly niche problem, but it's I've experienced a lot. That is making sure that everyone is speaking the same language, right? Like looking at a problem, we may be using the same words, but they're meaning different things, or using different words, but meaning the same thing. And especially early on, when you, like, as Michelle said, like we work with very, very, very intelligent people. And it is really important to make sure that people understand the same thing when we are looking at whatever artifacts that we are looking at. And part of that is also just relationship building. It is really important to, I think, like, set a goal, doesn't matter how small it is, and then reach that goal together and celebrate together, and celebrate early as you're like spinning up new teams and new projects, new products. And maybe this is like also touching a little bit on what Praveen said, like every new project is almost like a new company, right? Like there's a lot of alignment to be made. There's a lot of learning to be had. There's a lot of relationships to be built. I really like that aspect of the startups too. You know, it's always an exciting journey, and it's sometimes even like scary jumping into a new project. But like if the teams are able to appreciate the value that everyone is bringing to the room, and just gather around that idea of we are building this together and we are here to support each other rather than, like, fight each other or whatever it is that their like personal agenda might be. That's where I think the best outcomes, like that's the kind of room where you get the best outcome out of.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's always it can be challenging. Like I said, you're bringing together people from a sales background who are notoriously very forward and outgoing people. Then you're combining that with maybe engineering teams where they're maybe a little bit more introvert.
Well, I'm not going to comment on people's personalities, but I think the point is that there's a lot of relationship to be built both organizationally and personally as you bring in new people to the team, and that's usually up to the leaders to like guide that journey for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, were you going to add something there?
Yeah, I kind of forgot your prompt, but adding on to what Engin was saying, I'd like to go farther and say, make sure it's a psychologically safe team that you're building where anyone can ask a baseline question like, what do you mean by that? You know, you're saying, say, permissions. Do you mean authorization, or what are you saying? And making sure that no one is othered for asking questions that are assumed knowledge. So anyone could step in, say from customer support, and say, I'm not sure I follow what you're saying. Please explain that to me. And they are answered, because everybody's questions are meaningful. You know, if we don't answer them in the room, the customer is going to be like, I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what this does, you know, because within a room of people who are well connected, you know, in Zoom meetings or however, if they don't understand, your customers won't understand. So really setting the expectation that everybody's input is valuable and deserves an answer. And we're going to raise the knowledge base of everybody in this team, this cross-functional team. And no blame. There's no blame culture. There's openness and vulnerability. I messed up, you know, or I should have read that paper before I got to this meeting. You're right. But we don't make people feel bad.
Yeah, I think again, all valid points, Engin and Michelle. And what kind of resonated with me, what Engin was telling, is so when you bring all this cross-functional folks, right? One of the things I've found that like without the relationship, it's very hard to build the consensus among these highly intelligent people and subject matter experts, right? There is a ton of attachment, either to the idea or to the skill or what, right? Like, and that's where people are conscious. Hey, I spoke. Did somebody acknowledge that this is something valuable to them or not? So it takes a bit of maturity and skill, experience also to be as Michelle was saying, being vulnerable. Hey, I give the idea, but I don't get the credit. That's okay, as long as it is perceived valuable, and then it's implemented, right? Because together the entire team is benefiting out of that, right? And how do you take the I from the conversation to us and elevating your thinking, and not only your thinking, but like acting with that sense of ownership, right? Even though you don't have the driver, or even though you're not in the driver's seat, but you should still have the owner's mindset, and that can make a lot of difference.
Yeah. Very well said, Praveen. Maybe I'll just like add, one thing that's I always try to practice in my teams, and maybe this is a rephrase of what you said. I believe that in engineering teams and research teams, individuals don't grow individually. Individuals grow with the team, and the team grows with individuals, right? So unless there's that, as Michelle said, there's psychological safety, there's the support mechanisms in the team, there's this vulnerability. Growth of individuals will always be slow, and so the growth of the team will be slow. So there's this like the team culture that really needs to support that grow together, and together we do together you achieve, together you celebrate. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, I love that. With the micro feedback, where I love that you brought the whole team, because if you have a culture of providing radical candor, micro feedback, you could have added some numbers during your last presentation that would have resonated with the audience a little bit better. or, you could have done this. And that really challenges people to grow. And you're not being attacked, you're not being criticized, you're given feedback to really up your presentation. And then you give them feedback and you go in and as a team for any situation and pull together. Love the idea that you brought up. It's a team that grows together.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking a question, Jordan, if you don't mind. So this is like something I've seen a lot in a lot of teams, and we are all like coming from the software world here. Something I noticed, especially with junior folks, is like, let's say you are doing a code review, like a junior engineer joins the team, writes a piece of code, a senior engineer comes in and like turns it all red with comments. And like I've seen that tension a lot between like folks who are not used to getting code reviews and how they deal with that. I'm just curious, like how do you deal with that kind of like resistance, coming from people who are not used to receiving feedback?
Yeah, I mean, so there are. I think one thing that like. I'm not saying it's a problem or anything, is there is in some places there is this whole culture of heroic activities or so, right? Or something broke in production, somebody jumps in and then quickly resolves the issue, and there is this people acknowledge and recognize, right? And right, if this kind of thing happens, not very often but often enough, that there is, hey, somehow I'm good at this, right? And then that gets into the individuals, and I think that can lead to this kind of behavior. And the only way to address this is having a culture where you specify the rules of engagement, and you actually empower the junior engineer. Hey, these are the expected behavior, no matter who you are working with. And if that doesn't pan out in actual collaboration or during these code review session, let me know, and then you can go back and have a very candid conversation with the individual, right? And again, right, like sometimes or many times it's not possible, but the team is always larger than the individual, right? And that is something that we have to continue to reiterate. These things, right? Like, again, there is no standard playbook that, hey, you go. It depends on the situation, the company, the culture, how. And junior folks, right? They look up to the senior folks, right? They for them, it's this plain whiteboard, and they are looking for all the cues, what made them successful, so that they can have there in their toolbox. And in that very early formation stage, if you don't have folks who model the right behavior, I don't think you are providing that or nurturing a culture that can sustain.
Yep, agree with that.
Perfect. I have a quick question, just as a bit of a side note. I'm always intrigued. I mean, I guess it's going to vary on a case-by-case basis. And I'm just conscious of the time as well. I've got one more question after. But how do you go about delivering feedback in terms of, is it you pull someone to the side and deliver it to them in private, and then bring together the team to, like, I guess it will vary depending on whether it's team feedback or individual. But maybe like individual, how would you go about delivering individual feedback? Is it there and then? Is it you pull them to the side later on? Just an open question.
My short answer is I praise in public and critique in private.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love that.
I would do it at the next scheduled one-on-one, and get into a regular habit with the other person. I have, one-on-ones with peers, and it's like, okay, what could I have done better this week? And also I'll tell them what they could have done better and how can I support you in doing that. And it's usually just tactical things where you talk about the situation, the behavior, and the impact. The impact could have been achieved should you have done this. And just use a simple framework and you both agree to it. Or start, stop, and continue, whatever the framework is, but you get into micro coaching with your peers. I mean, you know, it's a great practice.
Oh, that's brilliant. Praveen, any ideas from you?
Now, 100% what
Yeah.
Engin has said, right? Always praise in public and, feedback in private. And we should also encourage, right? Like feedback for the managers. It's not just like, coming from the top, it should be bottom as well as sideways. And, as like, feedback is a gift, right? None of us are perfect, right? But together, if we can complement and supplement, that creates the winning culture, right? And just like, not that I watch much of sports, but when the baseball team, Florida Marlins won the kind of the MLB championship, they were the lowest. They were the roster which had the lowest, payout to the players, right? And sometimes it's right. It's not like what one heroic individual can do, but what a group of people with the right mindset can do, right? And that's what we got to, I would say, encourage and like keep it open, right? Keeping open culture doesn't mean that, hey, you can say anything you want. You have to say something meaningful, constructive, and useful.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I appreciate the thoughts on that. Again, just conscious of time, I do just have one final question for everyone, and I'll go in order of people on my screen. I'll go back to front this time, but just what advice would you give to early leaders or experienced leaders about taking products to market? It could be what you've said there, Michelle. I don't want to go to market first. I want to see what the competition is doing and then seeing how I can improve on that. Or it might be, Engin, I know on your LinkedIn, I've read a lot of times where you've delivered the first product in AV and areas like that. Would you encourage that? Yeah, I guess very open question. What advice would you give to senior leaders about taking your product to market, whether that be first or off the back of someone else? Praveen, I'll start with you.
Again, right, like not a single piece of advice, but not one size fits all. But I'm a big believer in reading psychology and books, and I would recommend this Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. This is a very famous book by Daniel Kahneman. He just passed away a few days ago or a few months ago, and he's a Nobel Prize winner. And it just exposes to gaps in human cognition and bias, right? And if you're aware of that, I think you can make better judgment and decisions. And at the end of the day, a success of a product, right, relies on what decisions you have made at various points, right? And if you can master that decision making coupled with data, I think it might take a couple of iterations, but you are increasing the probability of your winning as well as the product and the team.
No, that's perfect. I haven't actually read that book myself. I've heard of it. I think it actually got mentioned last week in a conversation I was having with someone as well. So I'm gonna have to check it out two times in 2 weeks. It's saying something. So, but no, I appreciate your thoughts there, Praveen, and again, thank you for the topic today. Engin, what about yourself?
Maybe I'll give another short answer and perhaps amplify something that has already been said. Focus on the problem, not the solution. Really understand what the problem you are solving and why that matters to anyone, really. Like, know why you are building that product really, really well, because you're the best person to understand that. If you don't understand why you're building something, your customers will definitely not understand it either. So focus on the problem first, and then the solution will follow. And it may end up being like, instead of I think Michelle already mentioned this, like it may not, the answer may not even be some fancy AI model. It may be something a lot simpler than that. But if you are solving the right problem, the solution almost becomes like, the exact solution almost becomes irrelevant. So I put a lot of emphasis on that. And once you understand that, then turn your attention to your teams and know your teams really well, and make sure that you are nurturing your teams in the right way to address whatever problem space you are choosing to address.
No, I love that. Love what you said there. If you're not understanding what the problem is, then, or what you're trying to solve, then your customers definitely won't. Yeah, that I can resonate with that in recruitment as well. So yeah, that's perfect. And then finally, Michelle.
Yes, I guess I'm going to add to Praveen and Engin's ideas. The quality of decision making, I agree, is everything. Making solid decisions, understand that humans are flawed, deeply flawed in how we think, and have a discipline of how you resolve that, and even perhaps things like disagree and commit. How do you overcome problems in the decision-making process? And then what was mentioned just now was focus on getting to market fit, focus on testing the value delivered to the user, not the shiny thing, not focus on the tech part, but what is the real pain point? What's the friction to the user? And also lower the barrier to adoption for users. Do they have to sign up for something in a complicated manner? Do they have to learn a whole thing? Or can they just fall into the pit of success and just make it easy for them to adopt your product and use it happily? And that's the goal, I think. Lean startup, basically.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, I think it's vitally important to really understand the customer needs. We're in a world where we just want everything at the snap of our fingers, don't we? So understanding how you can help customers do that and help users do that is crucial, really. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. We've probably got more that we could cover. I don't want to keep anyone too much longer on Zoom. I appreciate it's not the most entertaining thing to do, but hopefully everyone enjoyed the conversation today. Praveen, thank you so much for the topic. Like I said, I know it's been a couple of months in the making, but glad we managed to sit down and have a good conversation. And Engin and Michelle, thank you so much for participating as well, and for coming back to me so quick on it. I think we only spoke about a week or two ago about the topic, so appreciate you turning it around quickly to sit down and have a good conversation. And hopefully you all enjoyed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you
And
so much. It was awesome.